Okay. All right. So this is March 27th, 2026. And welcome to the SheThatExists Talk Show. So I woke up today and God told me to start a support group to help other newly ordained ministers and those who are being called. I woke up today and God told me start a support group for other ordained ministers and those who are being called and chosen for such a time as this to stand up for the evil that's been going on in the world, and to stand up for the evil that's like going on with our children and the courts and the trafficking and the covert abuse and the malignant narcissistic ritual abuse. And yeah, so whenever I surrendered to my calling as an ordained minister, I actually had a session with a Bible-based Christian counselor. And it was the best family Christian Bible-based counseling session I've ever had my whole entire life. I remember whenever I was 15 years old, I begged my parents for us to get like family counseling. When I got my first paycheck, whenever I had, I guess like my permit to drive in a car, I was working as a cashier at a Mexican restaurant, and I'd given my life to God at this time. And I remember getting my paycheck, and the first thing I did is I went to the bookstore and I bought books on religion, I bought books on self-help, I bought books on counseling, I bought books written by PhDs, I bought books by ministers, everything I could do, because I knew that there was dysfunction in the family tree, and I knew that there was dysfunction in the home where I lived. I just didn't know it was called dysfunction. I didn't know it was called narcissism. I didn't know it was called unrepentance. And so God started guiding me and directing me at 15 years old and teaching me through the Holy Spirit. The Ruach started teaching me and guiding me at 15 years old. And so I've been called into leadership at a very, very, very early age. And here I am going into the last fourth decade of my life. And I woke up today and God said, just to announce that I am starting small groups to help newly ordained ministers and those who are being called and chosen by God right now. And I want to go back to the Bible-based counseling session that I had whenever I was surrendering to my calling as an ordained minister. When I had this counseling appointment, the counselor told me that when he surrendered to his calling from God, that every single demon in his family tree came out on him to attack him and to destroy him and basically like end his life, because that's what unclean spirits and demons do. And when this Bible-based, family Christian-based like counselor told me that when he surrendered to his calling as a faith-based, Bible-based, family-focused Christian counselor, that every demon in hell came out of his family tree, that's whenever I knew that, okay, what was going on with me was, pretty typical of what ordained ministers have to go through, because I was experiencing the worst kinds of evils in my family tree whenever I was surrendering to my calling as an ordained minister and having to put up with things that like nobody should ever have to put up with, and tolerate things that nobody should ever have to put up with. And I wish that back then I had a support group, and I wish that I had others that, I could talk to and say, this is what I'm going through right now with my family as I'm surrendering into my calling with God for my purpose and for my vocation and for my career, my calling, and what God has for my life. Because Jeremiah 29:11 says that God has good for us. And there are many of us that our family members just put us through the ringer, and they harm us and they hurt us and they cause injury. Many ordained ministers and children of God who are being called by God right now, they're many of us are clearing intergenerationally. Okay, because there's a lot of things that have been passed down that are generational strongholds, bloodline iniquity, um, things that have been passed down into the family tree until the chosen one says no more, and to the one who's called as the true child of God, and the one who is obedient, who actually knows and listens to the voice of God. We're the ones who are overcoming. Okay, the word says greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. And the word says that Yeshua, commonly known as Jesus Christ of Nazareth, has already overcome the world. And whenever he died and was human sacrificed on the stake, on the cross, I've heard it was like an X too, possibly. Um, that was the work that he did on the cross, to where he said no more human sacrifice, like it is finished. And I still go through mental and emotional and verbal abuse whenever I have to reach out or email or talk to my family members for any reason, because they're not the change makers. Okay, there are generational curse breakers in the family tree, and the generational curse breakers in the family tree are the ones who say no more. We finally stop allowing our parents to abuse us. We finally stop allowing them to cause harm to our lives, to speak negatively over our lives, to slander us, to speak word curses over our life. How many of you who are living for God or being called by God or surrendering to your calling in ministry, how many of you all have went through or survived, or God has protected you from mental, emotional, spiritual, financial abuse, verbal abuse, slander, character assassination, and any type of gossip or slander or defamation by your own family tree? I know I'm not the only one. So, I just want to keep this message really, really quick and say I woke up today and God told me to announce on my talk show that I am starting a small group and support group for anyone who's being called and chosen, or a newly ordained minister, for your mission and your purpose and your vocation with God. Because I know that I'm not the only one. And I have, over 30 years of leadership experience and real life experience to help and support others and getting your ministry going, getting really clear on the vision that God has given you for your mission, for your calling, for your ministry. And so I'm here to support with that. I'll come back on here later and share a little bit more. However, I woke up today with a really, 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 really strong knowing from God, to announce that I am starting an international support group for ministers in a small group, not only to help ministers where your family members are not being loving or not being supportive, or the family members who are choosing to keep and perpetuate the dysfunction and the toxicity. I had to walk away from toxicity a long time ago. God would send me back to minister to my family and to share the love of God with them, and to teach them the ways of God. However, they refused it. And ultimately, that's their journey. And so I feel like because I survived an abusive family tree and survived a sadistic, dysfunctional family system, God has empowered me, and God has blessed me, and God has endowed to me and granted to me the ability to support others through just the worst situations. And it's a tragedy that, like, we have family members who are dysfunctional, or who choose mental, emotional, or spiritual illness, or family members who continue to choose to cause harm to their own family members, and be psychologically abusive. And we can encourage these family members to get help mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We can encourage these members to seek holistic health and ways of being. I've even offered and guided and suggested to certain members in my family tree to just start researching psychedelics for mental health care. There's great research with psychedelics for mental health care for people who have experienced like significant childhood abuse, or people who have experienced PTSD. There's great research for psychedelics and mental and spiritual health for veterans and veteran families. And these are things that I do recommend because there are plant medicines that are known to help people with drug addiction or alcohol addiction, pornography addiction, everything, you name it. And a lot of times these are strongholds in the family tree that get passed down intergenerationally. And the Bible talks about strongholds, and the Bible also talks about bloodline iniquity curses. All right. So I'm just dropping some gold, dropping some wisdom, dropping some knowledge for those who are called and chosen and on the journey. And if you are earning your bachelor's degree to become an ordained minister, or you're newly ordained, let's connect. Reach out to me and let's connect if you feel compelled to, and you resonate with this message, and you connect with this message mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, energetically. And let's hop on a call, and I'll share more about the small group support that I'm offering internationally, because we shouldn't have to deal with, we shouldn't have to cope with ongoing abuse from our family members and ongoing harm and damage from our family members who don't want to get healthy, don't want to get mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy, don't want to do the work that God has called them to do, and don't want to focus on their part in clearing intergenerationally and taking responsibility, which the true meaning of responsibility means to respond to your soul's purpose and to respond to your soul's calling. So if you are being called by God, and or you are a newly ordained minister, okay, and you know that you're clearing intergenerational stuff, and you've had to clear intergenerational trauma yourself, and you are dealing with intergenerational stuff and bloodline stuff. Let's get on a call, see how I can support, and see how I can be there. Because what happens is the patterns is you get pulled back into the family abuse, and then you get entrapped again by the family abuse. And God doesn't want us to be abused by our family members. God does not want us to be psychologically, mentally, spiritually, or financially harmed by our family members. And when we are surrendered to our calling and God calls us out, we are to be obedient to God and to continue to love God and no longer let our family members harm us. And I know that there are a lot of ministers and a lot of people who have had to deal with this. When you choose to live for God and you choose righteousness and you choose goodness and you choose not to be a part of family drama or trauma or chaos or confusion, and you just like step apart and walk away from everything that is dysfunctional and wrong and just not godly in the family tree. I want to be that support for those who resonate with this message. And God told me clearly, I woke up today, God told me clearly to start a ministry support group for other ministers and for other called and chosen ones, to help others rise above family abuse and dysfunctional family abuse. And so they don't have to go back to their abusers for ministry support or help, because we should never, ever, ever, ever have to go to our abusers and those who have caused us harm and injury in life. And God provides, God protects. The Bible is very, very, very clear that when your mother and father forsake you or abandon you, that God will take you in and that God will care for you. And my testimony in Yeshua HaMashiach, commonly known as Jesus Christ of Nazareth, is proof. And I've barely shared any of my testimony and Yeshua HaMashiach, commonly known as Jesus Christ of Nazareth. However, I gave my life to God at 15 years old publicly, and had mystical experiences with God at 12, and had mystical experiences with God as far back as I can remember, till when I was 4. And So yeah, with that being said, I'm going to end this stream, and I look forward to who sees this and resonates with it and feels called for such a time as this. And when you hear of others being mentally, emotionally, and spiritually and ritually or sadistically abused by their own family members, please intervene. I look forward to, in the future, having several ministry homes, and I look forward to, in the future, having several safe houses for people to move into who are being ritually, sadistically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually and criminally abused by their own family members for loving God and for surrendering to their calling and their purpose in ministry or being called or chosen, or for those who are simply deciding to follow God and start doing, the good work and to be good and stay doing good and not get involved with evil and unrighteousness. And so, however I can help and support, by leading this small group, um, I'm here to help and support. And this is all for now, and I'll be back. Contact and emails can be made at SheThatExists@gmail.com. And to get onboarded and to schedule and book a session with me as an expert coach or consultant, or in spiritual counseling or master's soology sessions, I usually have my text number in front of me. I don't have it memorized yet. So, but I'll put some links in the description, and then also I could be reached at my email. This is all for now. I'll be back.